particularly when it comes to inheritance, sort of this planning and this preparation stage, is really starting to think about, there's the potential that I may not be feeling top of my game, when this happens, right? Like there's a period of mourning, there's a period of grief that will impact each of us differently. And being able to have the skills that you can assess how you're doing. How are you physically, mentally, emotionally? Because you're going to have to make decisions.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk, the podcast series from my company, Plectrum Advisors, that helps to bring interesting people and interesting ideas to you to talk about the things that matter most to you. Today, we're going to cover a subject that comes up a lot in my practice, and that's inheritance. How to handle inheritance, how to best prepare for it, and what are all of the aspects of handling inheritance that you need to pay attention to. In order to cover this in the best possible way, I've invited a friend of mine. Her name is Sarah Parkins, and Sarah is going to help us discuss the emotional and psychological aspects of inheritance. And I'll give you a little bit of a background about Sarah, who's joining us today. Her name is Sarah Parkins, and she spells that with an H, S-A-R-A-H, which is a little bit different than the Sarah Parkins that most of us know here in Los Angeles, Sarah Parkins, the violinist, who doesn't use the H. But Sarah is a certified integrative health coach with 17 years of corporate experience, including 12 years in institutional finance, and she's a seasoned entrepreneur since 2016. Sarah helps professionals and business owners optimize their health and longevity through programs addressing detox, inflammation, hormone regulation, nervous system recovery, and reversing biological age. In this episode, Sarah will discuss how health and wealth intersect when preparing for an inheritance, and why good health is crucial for making confident decisions, managing transitions, and ensuring long-term well-being. This is a conversation you won't want to miss. So welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Tom. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. It's wonderful to be here, and it's a really great topic and an important one we're going to be sharing today.
Yes, we run into this quite a bit in my practice of people who are fortunate enough to inherit either property or money or assets. And for most people, this brings on either a very significant or somewhat significant change in their station in life because there are more assets than they had before. And part of my job as a guide has been to try to help them navigate the pragmatic aspects, which are tax and legal considerations, but more importantly, how to think about this influx of assets that you didn't have before, and how to take a long-term view in terms of what this can mean for your life and how to make it the best possible thing that could happen to you. In this episode, we're going to talk about the preparation steps, or the things that you should do to prepare before an inheritance comes your way. We will be recording some subsequent episodes where we'll talk about some of the more specific things. And Sarah, you'll be joining us on those episodes also. But in this episode, we're going to try to focus on the very first things that should happen. These are the preparatory steps. And I'll speak for a little while on the things that concern my aspect of handling the particulars of the finance. And then I'm going to turn it over to you, Sarah, to talk about what your views are on how to prepare for this emotionally and psychologically.
Excellent. That sounds like a great approach.
So the preparation, what do we mean by the preparation? Well, when the clients that I've dealt with that we have that are fortunate enough to be able to receive an inheritance, there is a team that needs to be built before any of this happens. And that team consists of generally at least 4 different people or players. One is the financial advisor, like myself, handling and talking about the specific assets and how they should be transferred, how they should be handled, should they be changed, etc. That's the financial expert. The next is an attorney, usually a trust and estates attorney. And this person needs to be engaged way before an inheritance event occurs so that you can discuss how does this work in terms of how is this distributed? What are the legal ramifications? What are the different types of assets that are coming your way? Sometimes the different types of assets are going to transfer in different ways. If it's real estate, there needs to be change of title. If it is pre-tax assets like that are in an IRA, they are handled differently and there are different rules for that kind of thing. And the trust attorney also can help you set up your particular legal situation to create a trust for yourself before this inheritance happens, so that these assets will be protected, so that they can be passed on from your end of things. And also, the trust attorney may be able to advise you on the person that is going to give you these assets. Maybe that person needs to change their legal structure to a trust or from a will or that kind of thing. So these conversations, well before any of this happened, are valuable and can really benefit you when this event occurs. So that's the financial person and the legal person. The third person is your accountant or CPA. There are all kinds of tax implications that can happen, and it's really good to bring in your CPA or your tax person ahead of time to say, this is what's likely to happen. It may not be happening immediately. It may be years down the line. We don't know. But here's what I think I'm in line to be able to receive. What should I be thinking of in terms of what is this going to do to my future? What are the tax implications? What are the different ways that we can handle this? Are there things that we could set up in a corporate structure that would make this a better situation for me? So that's the financial person, the legal person, the accountant. And then the fourth person is someone like Sarah, someone who has a really good handle on the emotional component here, especially if someone has passed away and has given you these assets. There are all kinds of issues that will come up, and Sarah's going to speak in a second about this. And it's good to have contact with a person like Sarah ahead of time, just to start to have the conversation about how should I be preparing. So those are the four people: financial person, legal person, an accountant or CPA, and an emotional support person. So why don't we move to Sarah? Sarah, can you speak a little bit about this preparatory phase and speak a little bit about what you've seen happens in these situations and how you might be able to help people understand things?
Absolutely, Tom. Thank you so much. You did a phenomenal job there of explaining for people some of the preparation steps they need to be thinking of when it comes to inheritance. And it's really key to have people around you. It's when somebody passes away, we all experience grief in different ways, and it is unique to each of us. But one of the things that is consistent is it's not something that you can do on your own. And you often don't have all of the expertise to be able to navigate through an often very complicated situation. And on top of that, your whole body and your whole being is potentially awash with emotion and the impact of losing somebody that you may hold very, very dear and love very deeply. And so it was wonderful just listening to you then about those four, key people that are part of your world effectively, in addition to, family and friends, and they offer great support. But it is really important to have a wealth advisor like yourself, to have that lawyer who is an expert in trust and estates, and to have your accountant as well, because there are obviously tax implications, and it's really important to get that advice up front so you understand what you're doing. You can navigate, with those three people. But in addition, one of the sort of perhaps newer ideas is to bring somebody in, like a health coach like myself, somebody who can help you navigate this in a professional capacity, to be alongside you in your journey, because emotions do or can be very, very intense during these times. And one of the things that we can be railroaded as human beings with our own emotions, and they can take us off on a journey that we didn't plan to go to, and we end up down a rabbit hole, and it's hard to figure out how to get out of that. And particularly when it comes to inheritance, sort of this planning and this preparation stage is really starting to think about, there's the potential that I may not be feeling top of my game, when this happens, right? Like there's a period of mourning, there's a period of grief that will impact each of us differently. And being able to have the skills that you can assess how you're doing. How are you physically, mentally, emotionally? Because you're going to have to make decisions. And even though you have all of these great people that you've built a relationship with, and the time is, you said it right, Tom, the time is to go out now and build relationships with those people. Don't wait until an event happens, because it can add to your chaos and your unsettled feelings. And often one of those things that we experience through grief is that sort of the safety net has gone, and we can feel quite lonely in that journey. And so if you've made your contacts beforehand and you've built that trusted network, somehow gives you a little bit of safety to figure out how to navigate along the path. One of the things that is also important in your preparation stage is thinking about how you make decisions. And that can be quite hard to do when you're in a state of grief, or you're dealing with a difficult decision of, you've had an influx of inheritance, whether that's in assets or, from a monetary standpoint, from a house, or whatever it looks like. Knowing who you are, knowing how you make decisions is really important, because even though you're working with all of these great people, you are the leader of that team. You are the one that is making the decisions. That team is not making decisions for you. They're just there to bounce ideas off with you, to give you support, to give you some ideas to consider, and then you're the one that actually makes that call and makes that decision about what you want to do. So spending time figuring out how you make decisions is important, and also being aware of, are you making decisions through other people? Are you seeking other people's opinions and approval even to make decisions? That's a big one that I see come up a lot. People struggle with the discernment of their own decision making. So they perhaps look to other people to make decisions for them, because then if it all goes wrong, they've got somebody to blame. Whereas when you take accountability for your own decision making, when you start to reflect on your values and your priorities, you can then make decisions that align with those values and priorities, which means in the future you can have your needs met, which is often something that can take us out of alignment when our needs are not being met because of a decision that we've made, and we can feel really, we can feel a tension between what we're actually experiencing and what we really want based on our needs. And so the conversations that, of course, somebody is going to be having with yourself as their wealth advisor, with their trust and estates attorney, with their accountant, there's going to be lots of questions, lots of conversation. What do you want to do? And so it is worth the time investment. It's worth the effort on getting to know yourself and who you have become now. If you've never done this work, it can be a whole new thing to explore. But how you react to emotional pressures, how you react to guilt, excitement. There's a whole range of emotions that you can feel on an inheritance event. And some people struggle with that. They struggle with the potential excitement of this wealth coming in, but then feeling guilty that they shouldn't be feeling excited because they've just lost somebody that they really love and hold very dear. And then there's how do you navigate that? Um, and of course, ultimately, when, the last thing I wanted to say about this is when an inheritance event comes, and potentially you step into a very large amount of wealth, that brings with it a new set of responsibilities. When we know that when people are asked to steward wealth, that comes with new responsibilities, that comes with accountability, and that can be a pressure for a lot of people. And so having somebody like a health coach alongside you to bounce those ideas off, to explore, to really get to know yourself, what's important to you, and then moving forward with confidence that you're making decisions that align with who you are and where you want to go in your life.
Yeah, I love all of this, Sarah. We've dealt with this many times in my practice, and there's some specific things I can bring to light here that maybe would be unknown and kind of tie in with what you had been saying. Going back to the team of the four people, the financial advisor, the attorney, the accountant, and the health coach. These are relationships that you're going to establish with these people. It's not one phone call. Hey, I found out that my parents are going to will me the house, and I would just like you to know that, and thank you, and hang up. These are relationships. These people have to get to know you. They have to get to know who you are, how you think, and you may or may not be completely in sync after the first, second, or third phone call in terms of them understanding what is it that you're trying to accomplish here. And you may not know, right?
Yeah.
So
that's a great point. Yeah.
So part of this getting to know these people is an understanding that you're going to develop relationships with each of these four people. Another thing that happens is they may not all be in agreement in terms of what they recommend to you. So what do you do when you have a conflict where the trust attorney is saying, I think you should do this, and the accountant says, I think you should do this, and the financial advisor says, no, you should go over here. That's not something you want to be dealing with 2 weeks after a funeral, right? This is something you want to be thinking about and allowing these people to get to know you. And that's just not one phone call or one meeting. This is just like an accountant. When you work with an accountant for many years, they get to know your rhythm. They get to know how much do you like to save? How much do you want to put away? How aggressive do you want to be with taking deductions for a home office or whatever, those kinds of things. Everybody is different. It's not one size fits all. So getting to know these people and having these people get to know you is extremely valuable when the event happens and you have to deal with something like this. The biggest blunders, I've seen many blunders, but the biggest blunders come from the absence of what I just talked about. The relationships aren't there. They call up somebody, say, what should I do? The person says, do this. Then you do it and you go, well, now wait a minute. But that didn't address that, or I didn't think about this. But how come you didn't tell me about this option here? So these things need to be these are relationships just like any other relationship in your life. The more you get to know these people, the more you get to have confidence that these are the people that are in sync with you. Just the better position you're going to be able to maximize this situation without regret or without stumbling. My dad's an attorney. My dad's 99 years old. He's still working full time as an attorney.
Incredible.
In New York State. And he has people come to him that have just inherited something and he's the attorney person. And he says, without exception, none of them have done any preparation. They've just come in and say, okay, I got this for X number of dollars. What do I do? And, Dad said, well, this is going to be a long conversation here. It's not just, I'm going to give you a 5-minute answer. Got to know all of the aspects. Do you have children? Do you want to pass this on to them? Do you want to pass it on to them all equally? Do you want to protect so that the children don't inherit too much of this and screw up their lives at too early an age? All of those kinds of conversations have to happen. And I fear that most people, and maybe myself included, have some preconceived notion that, none of this is really that important. It's just that,
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get a bunch of money, fabulous. Well, it can be, but the more you're prepared for this, I think the closer you're going to get to optimizing a good situation for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, to be able to build relationships with people is key. And that trust that you're developing together, really, that's what your relationships are going to be built on, right? And that takes time. As you pointed out, you have to get to know somebody. You have to have conversations. And, you're right. I think a lot of us, myself included, before an event happens, like inheritance, you just sort of think, oh, well, if it happens, oh, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
But actually, when it does happen, and I lost my lovely dad over a decade ago and wasn't prepared for it in any shape or form. And it's chaotic and it's emotional and it's difficult. And then you have to somehow pick yourself up and put an organizer planner hat on, and you have to start reading things that are in a jargon that you've no familiarity with. And it's overwhelming. And then on top of that, you're trying to build relationships with people and scrabbling to find people who you think could help you. So that usually starts with calls, friends, other family members. Hey, do you know a wealth advisor? Hey, have you worked with a trust and estates attorney? Do I need a trust and estates attorney? I don't think I need a wealth advisor. I'm not sure I've got enough wealth to warrant it. I don't know enough about finance, right? Like all of these things come up in your head when you're in that sudden shock of losing somebody, and you've got this right on your doorstep, and you've got to deal with it. Yeah. And so the point that you shared then, Tom, about really building those relationships and building them early, I can't get behind that more. Mostly because I've been through it and I didn't have it, and I wished I had. Yeah. And the benefit of going through something like that gives you that wonderful hindsight to be able to then share, and that wisdom to share with others, to say, you know what, don't wait, just go talk to different people, schedule calls with people, get to know them, find out how they work, let them know how you work, what's important to you. All the good ones out there, Tom and I included, will always take a call with anyone and have a chat with them, because this is life stuff, right? Like it's also death stuff, and that brings up a lot for people. Yeah. So I think, really encouraging, and now, working with individuals on this, it is a lot to contend with, and there's a huge emotional component to it. And our emotions can often direct our behaviors. Yeah. And those behaviors can drive our thinking, or our thoughts drive our behaviors, whichever camp you fall into. But ultimately, you then start making decisions around that. And you want to know, even though you're dealing with the criticality of losing somebody, that your decision-making is your decision-making and not somebody else's. Yeah.
Yeah, it's well said. In my practice as a wealth advisor, one of the main mantras of investing any money, whether it comes from wages or inheritance or wherever it comes from, is that emotions cannot play a part in the decision-making process. And that sounds just crazy to most people, because they say, well, I do have some emotional, connection to something. But we've been, I'd say, 90% of our success is because we have successfully designed systems to exclude any emotions from investment decisions. And boy, that's difficult when you're in the throes of either grief or changes or conflicts. Sometimes inheritance goes to, you're one of 3 children or one of 5 children, and so there's conflict there. The other conflicts that I've seen, even when you're we're the sole beneficiary, is if your value system is significantly different than the person who gifted you this. So if you have an ultra conservative person who has scrimped and saved their whole lives and then gives you this money and you are not like that, the level of guilt and the level of, well, what should I do? Well, they gave it to me, so should I follow their value system? If I follow my value system, am I somehow disrespecting what they thought? I mean, these are all things that are, 6 or 7 layers down, but I've seen this in my practice.
Yeah, I can believe it. It all comes up to the surface, and offering an additional sort of layer to what you were saying around the emotional side needs to be kept out of the decision making. And one of the things that I would love to encourage people to do is you can respond to your emotions. You're allowed to have emotions. You can't control them. The way that you feel, those things come up, and it's okay and it's safe to feel them. What we often need help with is learning how to connect with ourselves and connect with our emotions to then respond in a way that works for us, right? So not allowing our emotions to drive us, not allowing our emotions to drive our behavior and our decision making, but it doesn't mean separating them and saying, I'm not feeling this, and pushing it away and down, because that can be equally detrimental and it can pop up at different times and surprise you. So by welcoming in those emotions, allowing yourself to the space and the time to feel them, to process them, to ask what they maybe showing you. Sometimes, or not often, sometimes quite often, our emotions show us what we value and hold dear. And you talked about how, when somebody is really, struggling with should I use this inheritance in the way that the person was with their money? And that's different to me. And if I use it in a different way, am I somehow not respecting them? And how do I navigate that? Yeah. These are all valid questions. It's all okay to feel them. And when you give them air, when you give them some oxygen in the right space, in the right setting, you can take the pressure off. You can alleviate that tension that you can feel internally, so that then when it comes to making these critical decisions around what are you going to do with those assets, which financial products are right for you, how are you going to address your tax liabilities, how do you want to steward this wealth long term and ultimately your legacy, you have a clearer mind, you have a clearer sense, and you get that clarity because you've given yourself the time to work through some of the emotional and even the spiritual aspects of
inheritance. Yes. I mean, well said. We see this, I've seen this in my practice, where someone inherits stock from, let's say, the father or the mother, worked at a company, got stock options or RSUs or something, and had a large number of shares of a certain company. And it was the company they worked for. And now those shares of stock have been passed down to you. I've seen this multiple times. And then we look at, so that happens, and you're a client of mine, and we're looking at, and they think, well, what should I do? And it's very difficult for me to help them through this process of understanding that the fact this came from your parent, of the company they worked for, shouldn't bestow upon this asset some kind of a sacred something. It's just an asset. And if we always want to diversify our assets, right, in order to protect ourselves and to grow in a proper way. It's difficult for people to say, okay, sell some of it, because they're saying, well, geez, Dad, this is where he worked. He believed in this. That's why he gave it to me. And now I'm going to sell it. These are emotions that need to be, especially on your side of things, need to be taught. It's okay to feel that way, but we need to talk about it and talk about, is this in your best interest, your best financial interest, your best emotional interest, and what steps do we need to do in order to get this to a point that this is going to serve you the best in the long run. And these are difficult things, especially in that situation that I said where the
But yeah, no, that is a great example to share with people because there is so much tied up to that, right? So, dad leaves you some stock, and that feeling of, oh, he worked at the company for so long,
yeah.
I don't want to sell it. And yet, also, I understand now, having talked with my wealth advisor, that if I want to continue to live the life I want to live, I'm going to have to sell some of that stock in order to do X, Y, and Z. But if you haven't had those conversations, then it's hard to make a decision. And it's also, it takes time too to adjust to that. It takes time for us as human beings to let go of things, to let go of anything, to let go of relationships, of assets, of situations, experiences. There's something about it, and particularly in this day and age as well, where there's so much going on in the world. And I think there's a little bit of, I was thinking about this the other day, there's a bit of a whiplash effect from COVID for many people that is still present. There's sort of a fear that got triggered, an intrinsic fear, which is all about, fear comes up when survival is on the table. And of course, that brought up a lot for people during that time. Yeah. And when you have fear, that also creates a scarcity mentality. And you look at sort of the generations that grew up during First and Second World War, they learned how to hold on to everything, to use everything, right? Like to never throw anything out. And so you've got large groups of children now who are older and grown up and having to work with their parents if they're still around, but there's a lot to clear from a home, and if the inheritance happen, that parents pass away, and then you've got houses full of stuff. And then how do you emotionally let go of that? It's a really, really big deal. And you're then, going through the motion of clearing the house that maybe you grew up in, and all of these amazing memories are coming up. And yet you're also, trying to work out, well, I'm an adult now, and my life, what does this mean for my life, and what do I want for my life, and what do I value? It's enormous to go through all of that.
Yes. Yeah, it really is. Well, Sarah, this is just really great information to be able to get out to our listeners here. I think we've probably covered enough in this area in this episode. We're going to do at least 2 more episodes on the other aspects of inheritance with things including sustainability, further discussions about balancing emotions and wealth, how to monitor your success, how to make sure that you're continuing to check in on the plan. And we'll talk about decision fatigue, which certainly happens in this process because it is an overwhelming process. We'll also be talking about tax implications, about how different assets are taxed. Some are taxed, some aren't. How to think about distribution of these assets once you've received them, and how to use them, and how valuable they can be to you, and how to determine whether you've got enough to live, maybe more extravagantly than you had been living. So we'll be talking about all of those aspects in the future episodes. But Sarah, I want to thank you so much for coming in and sharing your expertise in this area. Sarah's company is called Birch Cove, and we'll put the graphic up on the screen here. The website is birchcove.co. And you can learn a lot more about Sarah and the work that she's doing and continues to do. And I encourage all of you to contact Sarah and to reach out to her to see if she might be someone that you could put on your team to help you navigate these kinds of things. I think that's it for today. Thanks again, Sarah, for being here and for being such an interesting guest.
Tom, thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to talk about this really important topic today. And it was a very rich discussion, and I'm really looking forward to our next couple of conversations and episodes that we're going to do, because it's such an important one for everybody, and it gives fuel to life, right? And it helps us navigate some of the complexities and the difficulties in life that we experience as human beings. So thank you again.
Yeah, my pleasure, Sarah. Thanks for being here. And I look forward to our next. For those of you at home, we will be recording at least 2 more episodes in the future, so you can stay tuned for those. You can see all of the past episodes on the website, plektrumadvisors.com, under the podcast tab. And we thank you at home for taking the time to listen. And if you have questions or comments, there is a place on the website that you can do that. And we'd be happy to hear from you. And I think that's it for today. So thanks again for watching. Once again, I'm Tom Rizzo with Sarah Parkins. And we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thanks for watching.